We have a lot of serious things to talk about today, and I'm going to put the most serious thing right up front, so let's just jump in.
Isn't there an old song that goes, over the hills and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go?
Sure, only this is the way it goes. Over the river and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go. The horses wait to carry the sleigh for wine and drifting snow. Over the river and through the woods, the harvest wind and blow. It sings and tones and bites thunder, round we go.
Well, there's only one thing wrong with that.
What's that, Charlie Brown?
My grandmother lives in a condominium.
Serious stuff that we're talking about. I love how that song kind of brings all that stuff together, because when you think about it, we're all on the way to grandmother's house, right? So Charlie Brown's grandmother lives in a condominium. The song seems to imply that grandmothers should live in a rustic old cabin deep in the woods over the river and all that. But I suspect that even in this room, there's a lot of in between those things. So let's do a quick little poll. Those of you that have loved ones who are elders, how many are living independently on their own or with family? Raise your hand. Great, great. How many have moved into an independent but a senior community? Okay, a few there. And how about assisted living, some kind of assisted living? Okay, there's a couple there. And how about skilled nursing home? Have a loved one, a parent or grandparent in a nursing home? One or two in the back. Okay. I think, well, my experience has shown me that our frailest elders are the ones who end up in a nursing home, where they need the most care. And I think that's where we have the most trouble giving that care. So we're going to focus a lot on that population today, that group of people, the grandmothers and grandfathers, moms and dads who are living in our nursing homes. Now, in this country, we have a lot of those, a lot of nursing homes. There's, in fact, over 16,000 of them in America, taking care of over 1.6 million residents right now, okay, in the whole country. And all of you in this room, by the time you're 65, you'll have a 1 in 4 chance of living in a nursing home. So look around at your table. Tables hold about 6 people, right? So do the math in your head, how many will be living in a nursing home, right? Now you shouldn't have to worry, because there are a lot of rules around how nursing homes operate, right? There's a lot of rules to keep us safe and healthy and happy in nursing homes. In fact, out of all the industries in the country, the second most regulated industry is nursing homes. Does anyone know the first? Nuclear waste. Yeah. Now there's some differences of opinion on this one. Some say that Homeland Security has now gone above that. But still, right? Lots and lots of rules. So that should keep us feeling really good about nursing homes. Man, when I get to a nursing home, I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to be happy, because the government's looking out for all that stuff for me. Look at all the rules that are in place. But we find that that's not quite true, because in surveys, 30% of people say they would rather die than live in a nursing home. And that's tough if you run a nursing home, right? Because 30% of people in the world would rather die than be your customer. They would rather die. Well, that statistic brings up a question for me, and probably for many of you too. What is the problem with nursing homes? What's so bad about them? And how did it get this way? Where did we go wrong in history in bringing these things that nobody wants to live in and are regulated so heavily, but end up being the place where so many people end up? And then if we figure those out, then what can we do about it? Those of us in this room, healthcare professionals, what can we do about it? Not all of us in this room work in nursing homes. So those of us that don't and those that do, what can we do about it to change it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I'm going to start off with a story. Some of you have heard of a man named Bill Thomas. He's a doctor. And this story starts way back when he graduated from Harvard Medical School. Top of his class. I've got a picture of him here. Dr. Bill Thomas graduated top of his class from Harvard. And in all of his time at Harvard, he was never required once to set foot in a nursing home to be a doctor. That wasn't a requirement. So he didn't have to learn about the different needs of the aged population. It wasn't required. And on the taxi ride in this morning, I asked Dr. Jesty if that was still the case. And he said, well, there are programs available now in geropsych and gerontology and stuff, but it's not required. So doctors even today still haven't caught up with the fact that our population is aging, right? Well, Dr. Thomas, he got right out of medical school and he wanted a flashy job. He wanted to be an ER surgeon, right? So he got a job in an emergency room, and he had seen the TV show, right? Like many of you have seen ER. So he knew that there was going to be lots of drama and sex and celebrities running around, and there would be no end to the excitement they would have in his life. Well, after a while, we'll back up there. After a while, he started to get a little bit burned out, because with all that fast pace and the drama and the sex, that burns you out after a while. And he started thinking of some kind of a change. He loved the way that someone would come in with a serious problem like a trauma, an accident, an injury, and he could fix it. He could help them in some way that was powerful. He could save their life. There's a tremendous feeling of power that comes from that, being able to help people that way. He loved that. But he was getting burned out by the pace of it. Well, around that time, there was a local nursing home. This was in upstate New York. And the director of that nursing home needed a new medical director. That's the doctor who lives at the nursing home, not lives, but works at the nursing home, sees all the patients there. Needed a new medical director, called Dr. Thomas and said, hey, we need a medical director. Why don't you come over and be our medical director? Well, like many people, Dr. Thomas had a similar reaction to nursing homes. Like, why would I want to go in a nursing home? Why would I want to work in one? I certainly don't ever want to live in one. So he said, no. Well, this director kept calling, and one week, he happened to call the day that Dr. Thomas was laid off from his work at the emergency room. So lucky for that nursing home, because he said yes. And he set up shop in the nursing home. He started getting to know all of his patients, their charts, and doing his rounds and visiting them. And he still loved the way that if there was something wrong, he could whip out his prescription pad, scribble something down, and take care of what was wrong with him. Well, one day, he walked into a woman's room. She had been complaining about a rash. And he knew he would be able to help. So he walked into the room, and he knocked on the door. And like many young doctors, he said, hello, can I help you? And this old woman, let's call her Grace. Grace, by the way, was a beautiful, beautiful old woman. Her hair was silver white, like pure white, and it was so smooth. And she had those eyes that are like blue marbles, where you can kind of almost see the ocean in them, and they're just kind of glistening and watery. And if you stare into those eyes, you can just see forever. So he walked up closer to Grace, and she kind of motioned at her arm, and he knew exactly what kind of rash it was, and he knew exactly what to do for it. So he whipped out his prescription pad, and he wrote hydrocortisone cream 2%, apply as needed until rash is gone. And he ripped it off the pad and attached it to her chart. Then as he was leaving, he said again, is there anything else I can do for you? Well, Grace had arthritis, and she had kind of those gnarled old hands, right? And she started to speak, and he couldn't hear her, so he came in closer. And she reached up with that gnarled old hand, and she grabbed him by the collar, right by the throat, and pulled him down with a strength he had never felt before. And she looked into his face with those blue eyes, and she said, Doctor, I am so lonely. And she let go. And that stopped him in his tracks. And he stepped back, and he had to get out of there. He had to walk away. Because he realized that he had nothing in his little doctor medical bag that could do anything for Grace. And he had no prescription drug that he could prescribe that would take away her loneliness. And he went back to his office, and his office was filled with medical textbooks and diagnostic manuals and stuff like that. And he flipped through them, and he didn't even find the word loneliness. And this was when Dr. Thomas started to realize the problem with nursing homes. That he could not find a medical problem to Grace's loneliness. He couldn't find it. So how did we get here? How did we end up at this place where Grace and so many other people like her are suffering like this, and the doctors and the nurses, the people who are supposed to take care of them, can't do anything about it because they don't have anything in the medical system that can fix loneliness? How did we get here? Well, those of you that listen to National Public Radio might listen to This American Life every once in a while. And a few weeks back, there was an interesting episode that dealt with a different kind of retirement. And I think it's a great example. Because if we're going to design the perfect nursing home, is that how we got here? Did someone sit down and think up this nursing home idea? I don't think so. But I think this example could shed some light on it for us. So, does anyone know who that guy is? I'm talking about the smaller, hairy one. Cheetah. That's Cheetah, yeah. In the 30s and 40s, the Tarzan films, Cheetah played, well, there were several chimps, I found out, that played Cheetah. But this one is still around. Still around, yeah. And Cheetah is the oldest primate living in the world. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for that. He turned 76 last month. Now, chimpanzees only live till mid-50s. That's their life expectancy, right? But cheetah's living longer than that. And in addition to being the world's oldest chimpanzee, excuse me, he's also the wealthiest. So he lives in Palm Springs. That's where he retired. And this is what he looks like now. That's Cheetah. Well, we have a problem in this country in that there are over 1,100 chimpanzees living here that were either actors in television or movies. And I found out that you can only use them as actors in television and movies till they're 5 years or so. Then they start to get ornery. And because they're 5 times the strength of a human being, you don't want an ornery chimpanzee running around on a movie set. So after they turn 5, you can't use them as an actor anymore, right? But they live to 75, if they're lucky. So what do we do with them? There's also a lot of chimps that are here that have been used in medical research. And you can only do that so long with a chimpanzee, and then they can't participate in that kind of research anymore, right? So we have all these chimpanzees in the country, a surplus of them. Too many, there's a necessity. And we need to find some kind of home for them. So the government passed, the Clinton administration in 2000 passed the Federal Chimp Act. And that provided funds for retirement for chimpanzees. And what that led to was a lot of smart people getting together and saying, how can we design the perfect habitat for these chimps to live out their remaining years and live their chimp life to the fullest, right? Now, this is a special case. These weren't just wild chimps. Some of them have never lived in the wild. They were raised in captivity. Some of them had never touched the ground before. They'd always been on concrete and things like that, never climbed a tree, never interacted with other chimps. So it couldn't just be outside, right? So they had to design the perfect balance of outside chimp life and inside chimp life. And chimp pack mentality life, and then chimp have their own room where they could go when they needed to. So they designed Chimp Haven. This is in Shreveport, Louisiana. And there's 150 or so chimps that live there in retirement, right? I heard a funny story, actually. All the male chimps, when they come in, all the male chimps have vasectomies, right? Well, a couple of years ago, a baby was born. And they've been trying to figure out who was the culprit. They've narrowed it down into some chimps, but they think the procedure didn't take. So, but new life in the chimp retirement home. What's interesting to me about this, now I'm an animal lover, and I believe all animals deserve this kind of treatment, but in our society it doesn't end up that way. But as a society, this is how we're treating retired chimpanzees, right? That makes me look at how are we treating retired people and what kind of attention are we giving them. So a brief history of nursing homes, right? If we were going to design a perfect one, we might do it like that. We didn't. We didn't. In fact, Dr. Thomas says that the nursing home came about because of a result of an equation, right? Poorhouse plus hospital equals nursing home. That's how we got here. It's the result of a marriage between the poorhouse and the hospital. In the late 1700s, 1800s, the poorhouse was the place that you went or ended up or were forced to go if you couldn't take care of yourself, couldn't provide for your own income, or were by yourself. A county official, the overseer of the poor, would send you to the poorhouse, right? And even today, you might still hear people saying, oh, you're going to end up in the poorhouse, right? I hear that every once in a while. You're going to end up in the poorhouse. And the tone of that, when they say you're going to end up in the poorhouse, that's not a pleasant tone. That's not like you're going to end up at Chip Haven, right? So poorhouse equals bad, right? Some of these places were horrific. They were often run by people who were in it for the money. So they wanted to find the cheapest possible way to have these people survive, right? Where they could live off of their work. Horrifying places. That was the poorhouse system, and it came out of necessity. There were people who were poor, who couldn't take care of themselves. What do you do with them? That was one solution, and not a very pleasant one. Some other trends that were going on. In the United States, hospitals. What about a hospital? Couldn't you go to a hospital when you're sick? Well, in 1800, any guesses as to how many there were in the country? Hospitals, yeah. How many hospitals were there? I think someone said it. There was 2. There were 2 hospitals. In the entire United States, 2 hospitals. By 1873, there were still less than 200, right? And that number went up as we got into the 1930s, around the Great Depression and stuff. So there were solutions there if you were sick or injured or you needed that medical care, right? Also what was going on here is, in 1800, I don't know if you can see the contrast there, but 5% of Americans were living in cities. Only 5% in 1800. The rest of them were living on farms, out in the country. Now, if you lived on a farm, it was beneficial to have lots of children. Lots of children to help work the land, do the chores, and then as you got older, to help take care of you, right? That was your retirement policy. That was your Social Security, right? Having lots of kids. But as we move through time, 1900, there was 40% of Americans living in cities now. And in 2000, 75%. So if you live in a city, having lots of children means lots of mouths to feed, right? So people were having less children. Also, at that same time, there was this great westward expansion. People were moving out west to start a new life, right? They didn't always take mom and dad with them. So if your family started out here, you know, on the East Coast, where most families did, and then your kids moved out west and started a new life, who was going to take care of you when you were older? That became a problem. Here's another graphic that shows that. The white states are the ones with the highest population in 1790, and you can see as it goes through the decades, it's really changing. So as the population grew in the US, it also spread out and left a lot of isolated people. Another trend was industrialization. America figured out that if we took something we wanted to do and put it in a big factory with lots of people doing small repetitive tasks, we could do it more efficiently. We could save money, we could compete. So when it came time to take care of elders, doesn't it make sense that we applied the same theory? So a lot of these early, as we started to move into retirement homes, convalescent homes, things like that, they became like factories. And we used that industrialization idea to take care of our elders. Life expectancy, as you all know. In 1900, it was 47 or so for white men. Danita can correct me if I'm off on any of these. But in 2000, more like 75, right? So at 47, you're not elderly yet. In fact, I don't know if you're ever elderly, but you haven't yet approached that age when we think of you as being elderly, right? You might work and drop dead at work, so we don't have to worry about you, right? But by here, at 75, now you're getting up in years where you may have physical ailments and you may have reasons that you can't do the work that you once did. And you may require more care and more help. So that was another trend that changed. Even today, in California, our oldest older adults, right, aged 85 and older, in 2000, it was 500,000, right? By 2030, it's expected to double. Double. And I'm not even sharing all the statistics about what the baby boom generation is going to do, right? Huge numbers of people are entering older age, right? And that's going to greatly affect that necessity, right? We got more chimpanzees in the country, you know? So through the 1900s, there was all kinds of different approaches to these problems, these necessities of how do we take care of these people? It wasn't that we didn't care, because we tried. We came up with all kinds of ways to do it. And some of them were, like I said, retirement homes, or employers would set up a home that would take care of just their employees. There started to be pensions later on. Railroads started offering it. American Express was one of the first companies to offer that. They also started having what was called nursing homes, because they were often small homes run by retired nurses that would take care of elders in them. And these were social welfare sort of programs, right? But in 1954, one of the periods of time where Congress was investigating elder abuse in all these different kinds of places, they passed the Hill-Burton Act. And that did many things, including providing some money to build new nursing homes. But it also brought elder care under the purview of the healthcare system. So it went from social welfare to healthcare. That's one of the reasons why there's so many regulations, right? So this was very significant to me when I look back at how we got here. Is that once it came under the healthcare system, that changed things drastically. Because now to run a nursing home, you had to be a medical person. So all of these trends, excuse me, westward expansion, the increase of the population, life expectancy, industrialization, and medical oversight brought us to where we are today, to what we have now, which are these traditional nursing homes, where they have the shiny, sterile floors and long corridors, and people in them who are often isolated. And we end up, like Dr. Thomas discovered, with grace, people that are suffering from loneliness. So back to our story with Dr. Thomas, he started to pay more attention. He started to watch what Grace was going through. And he noticed in Grace and his other patients that loneliness was life-threatening. There were people that were actually dying from loneliness. Some of you may have seen this before. In fact, raise your hand if you've seen or heard from someone who withered away, who died from being lonely. Yeah, sadly, it's more common than we would like. He also noticed that it was widespread. This wasn't just his nursing home. And this isn't just your nursing home if you've noticed this. This is everywhere. Every nursing home in America, would you agree, you could walk into and find a lonely person? Yeah, fair enough. Well, when he noticed those two attributes to loneliness, he called it what it was. It was a plague. It was a plague on our elders like Grace. And sadly, that wasn't the only one he found. There was loneliness, but he also found helplessness. Raise your hand if you've seen helpless people in a nursing home. Right. And as he paid more attention to it, he saw that helplessness was really an imbalance that existed in this medical nursing home. I remember when I was a kid, probably in kindergarten, I love this, remembering this, because I came home with a styrofoam cup one day from school, and it was full of dirt, and it had little grass seeds on it. And I had to be really careful carrying it on the bus so it wouldn't spill any of it, you know. And I came home and I showed it to my mom, and we put it up on the windowsill so it would get sun, and I watered it. She showed me how to do that. And every day I would come and water my little plant. And pretty soon the grass seeds started to grow, and I could check on it every day, and it was growing. And then I drew a little smiley face on the cup, and then got scissors out and trimmed his hair every once in a while, you know. I was helping that little cup full of grass to grow. I was helping it to grow. And all of us do something like this when we're younger, and as we get older, it continues. even more so. So you might have a grandparent or an aunt that lives with you, and you as a child in the family help take care of them. Maybe a younger or older brother or sister, when they're sick, you help take care of them, right? Or just with daily chores, you help mom out with laundry, things like that. As you go into high school, maybe you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you help take care of each other in different ways. When one is sad, the other is there to help take care of them, right? As we get older, it increases even more. We have our own family. And if we have a family, then there's lots to take care of. If we have kids, well, then you're taking care of kids. That's a big deal. Maybe you have pets around. You're taking care of the pets, just like you did with that cup of grass when you were younger. Maybe now you're taking care of your own parents, right? Like how Bev moved out to this area to take care of her mom, right? Maybe you're doing that. You're taking care of people, taking care of your parents, your family. You're taking care of the dishes. You're taking care of making dinner at night, taking care of all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, one day, something happens. Maybe you fall down. Maybe you leave the stove on one too many times. Or maybe something else happens. You get a diagnosis. And someone decides that it's time for you to go into a nursing home. And chances are, from that day forward, you won't get to take care of anyone ever again. And it's that imbalance that leads to helplessness. It causes it, right? Now, I'm not saying, because I've worked in nursing homes before, and I've worked alongside some of the bravest, most giving people I've ever met in my life, the most caring people. So you're surrounded by people caring for you. And that's not the issue at all. You're getting great care in most cases. But you don't have any opportunity to give care. And that's where the imbalance comes in. That's where the plague of helplessness comes from. Well, the third one he noticed was this one, boredom, right? Raise your hand if you've been in a nursing home and seen someone who was bored, right? Okay, pretty fair statement. Raise your hand if you're bored right now. Okay, good. I always like to check. So boredom, he noticed, came from the pain we're feeling when we lack two things, variety and spontaneity. Now, because we have all these rules about nursing homes, variety is pretty easy. We've taken care of that. It's regulated, right? How many, raise your hand, I do a lot of this. Raise your hand if you know what you're going to eat for dinner Sunday night. Nobody? Nobody? Okay. My grandmother lives in a nursing home. She knows what she's going to eat for dinner Sunday night. She knows what she's going to eat for dinner for every day for the rest of her life. Yeah, because it's regulated, so they can be on a 3-week cycle, and they can repeat it, right? So Grandma Neff could sit down and do the math, and she could figure out that liver and onions is going to come back every 3 weeks, right? She loves liver and onions, so she won't mind that. But so we have variety. We have 3 weeks of variety. Good chunk. You know, it's like the McDonald's value menu, you know, one thing a day, and then it repeats. But she doesn't have spontaneity. She can't go into the refrigerator like I do when I get home and, what do I feel like today? Nothing in there, let's go out to eat. She can't do that. She doesn't have that freedom, right? So there's no spontaneity in her food. Also, raise your hand if you know what you're going to do for fun next Wednesday night. You do American Idol? No? But you already got it planned out. You got plans. Bowling? Okay, that's every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night, is that kind of a repeating thing? But you just got it on the calendar. Okay, good. So I'm sure I could pick a date or two that you wouldn't know what the activity was, right? And the rest of us are probably, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? How about this weekend? What do you want to do? Oh, let's try and make some plans. Well, my grandmother knows that bingo is going to happen every Sunday night. Not a problem for her. She loves bingo. But then she knows that current events is going to be Wednesday night. What does that even mean in nursing homes? Current events. That's an activity on every activity calendar I've ever seen at every nursing home. Current events. She knows, yes, it usually is. I'm being funny, but she knows that those things are going to be on the activity calendar. And it's going to repeat every month with changes. There'll be little changes. Activity people are some of the most creative people I've ever met, too. And it'll be that way until she's gone. So she doesn't have the freedom to have that spontaneity, to have that surprise. You know, I love the stress. I shouldn't say I love it. But if you work in a nursing home, the worst day of the year, what's the worst day of the year, those of you that work in a nursing home? Christmas, and yeah, aside from holidays though, what's the scariest day? Survey. The date that the state walks in that morning, right? How many like survey? Yeah, some of you get into it. Yeah, let's gear up and pass this thing. But this is a traumatic experience for the staff, right? You're in danger of getting shut down. If you make a mistake, if they ask you a question and you say the wrong thing, that could cost your facility $10,000. Who wants that kind of pressure? I don't have that kind of pressure in my job, and I do workout presentations for CEOs and stuff like that, right? I don't have that kind of pressure. No, if someone asks me a question and I make a mistake. So I ask, whenever I go into nursing homes, I ask the director of nursing. Any directors of nursing in here? No? Nobody? Are you a director of nursing? Past director of nursing? So the day the state walks in, how many surprises do you want to have that day? None. Everything has to be perfect, right? We want no surprises. Well, that's great if you're in the Army, right? But I don't want my grandmother living in a place where surprises are a bad thing, right? And I appreciate what the nurses go through because they have the state coming and it could cost their facility $10,000 to make a mistake. But that's not a great place for my grandmother to live, right? So in this medical institution, this medical model, and in a hospital, that's a good thing too. You don't want a lot of surprises. People need to get well and then go back out to live their lives. But in a nursing home, we've squeezed out the spontaneity. So he called these the 3 plagues of elders. And he said that the bulk of suffering in long-term care is caused by these 3 things. Not stroke, not memory loss, not obesity, not any of that stuff, but by these 3 things. Most of the suffering can be accounted for with these 3 things. And he saw that most of the people coming into his office complaining about a rash on their arm or my back hurts, what they were really complaining about was one of these 3. So what to do? Well, it's not all bad news, because Dr. Thomas was a smart guy, and he started to think about how we create a world for our elders in these nursing homes. We create a world. So for inspiration, he thought back to the oldest story he could think of world creating, the Garden of Eden, the Adam and Eve story, right? And he realized that God didn't build a nursing home for Adam and Eve, right? And all of the things that were in the Garden of Eden, none of those are in a nursing home. Why not? So he and his wife worked together on this project, and they started to bring in, first they started with plants. Not plastic plants, and not plants that they would hire someone to come in and take care of, like I'm sure the facility here does. They have people here paid to water the plants and make sure they're healthy. No, he asked the staff and the elders who lived there to take care of these plants. I don't know if any of you heard of this study that was done. In a hospital or a nursing home, they split the group into 2 groups. They gave everyone a plant, but half the group, they said, would you take care of this plant for us? We'll check back on you in a couple months and see how it's doing. The other group, they said, we'll come in and take care of this plant every day. We just want to borrow your windowsill. Don't touch it, right? And the group that was taking care of the plant, what do you think happened? Their health was better. Less complaints, better health, living longer, right? Because they were taking care of something. Even if it was just a plant. Just like me with the little grass seeds, right? When I was a little kid, that taught me something. But some being was counting on them for something. And he noticed that the helplessness started to melt a little bit. Just a little bit. It started to melt. So he didn't stop there. He went to animals. And he found that birds were great because you could have a bird in a cage next to someone who was in bed, who couldn't get out of bed. This was Sally and her 2 budgies there. She corrected you if you ever called them parakeets because they were budgies. And she loved those two little birds. And she was always conscious wherever, if she was out to see the doctor or something, she was always thinking about how they were doing, right? They depended on her. She couldn't clean the cage herself, but she could let us know when it was time. And she could bug us, and that was her job to do that. And that made a huge difference in Sally's life. And he found that these birds were smart enough to form relationships with elders, right? They were smart enough to know who each person was and build this relationship. And you could have companionship just from these little birds. That was Jordan right there. And Jordan once fell off leapt off his cage, flying leap off of his cage onto the floor to try to make a run for it. And he collided with that nursing home institution, the med cart. Busted his wing, right? We rushed him to an avian doctor, got him back. Everyone on the floor was asking about him, asking how he was. We brought him back. He had his wing in a little cast. He was in a glass tank, so his, I think Maud was his partner, and he would always be up against the wall of the cage. And we held a bake sale to raise money, because it's expensive to repair a little bird's wing, right? So we had to raise money for that. And we started a fund called the Wing and a Prayer Fund to raise money for Jordan's wing, right? But that's how deep these relationships go, because everyone asked about him. He always sat near the front desk on someone's shoulder, and everyone asked about him, and he knew certain people. So there was companionship again. And we didn't have to pay Jordan, right? Because what would it cost if we hired a private duty caregiver for every resident in the nursing home? A little too much. We couldn't afford that. But birds, they're cheap. And they work for peanuts. He didn't stop there, because we don't just have birds at home when we have pets. We also have dogs and cats too, right? So this was Captain. And he's a big golden retriever. Now, Captain and the cats that you'll see here are not therapy animals. Therapy animals are great. They do some amazing things. These are pets. Their job is to walk around and be a dog. So Captain weighs over 100 pounds. He's kind of fat. Obesity. And his job is to walk around and be a dog, which for him usually means begging for food, right? But that's his job. That's his only job. That's all we want him to do, right? And he developed so many relationships with the people in our building, right? This was Missy, this cat here. And you can see her and Sister Winifred are walking in step, right? Sister Winnie lived a lot longer than she should have because of Missy. Because she made it her job every day to go down and feed Missy. She made it her job to go to pet stores and convince them to donate hundreds of cans of wet cat food, right? And she would go up to her room after lunch every day, and she would make what she called the casserole, which involved some precise amount of dry food and some precise amount of two kinds of wet food mixed with a little bit of water. She would put it on a bowl, and she had one of those walkers that had the big wheels that she could sit on. She put it on the tray there on her walker, and she wheeled it outside to find Missy, because Missy was an outside cat. And Sister Winnie also made sure that when she died, there was another sister in line to take care of Missy, right? She stayed alive a lot longer than she should have, and she stayed walking much longer than anyone expected, because there was a reason to. So these pets started taking all of that helplessness and the loneliness and melting it even further. It started dissolving. Dr. Thomas didn't stop there, because we have kids at home, right? We've squeezed kids out of the nursing home, because kids bring lots of surprises. And we don't want surprises in a nursing home, right? Now, kids come and visit nursing homes already. Is that true, those of you that work in nursing homes? We have kids at Halloween. We have kids at Christmas time. We have kids at Easter. And there's probably a couple holidays in between there, right? That wasn't good enough. That's not long enough to develop a relationship with a child, right? Especially if it's not your grandchild. So he found ways to have them there every day. He started a daycare center in the nursing home. He started an after-school program. And the kids would come and not only come and visit all the elders that lived there, but they would get help with their homework. They would get better at reading. They would hear stories. They would be influenced by these elders who truly are elders of our community, who shouldn't be separated just because they all live in one place. So these kids would get this great benefit, and the elders would benefit from having the children around, would benefit from feeling needed again. Dr. Thomas tells a story about a young man who was in 5th grade and was doing very poorly in reading and came in after school once a week for help with this older man. And he helped him throughout that semester and lived longer than anyone thought he should. And the boy came and brought him his report card, and he had gone up a letter grade or something, a serious improvement for him. And shortly after that, the old man died. You know, I think feeling very fulfilled, like he had made a difference. How important is that? So he brought in kids. Now, sometimes pictures aren't enough, especially for those of you that are, let's say data nerds, right? You like to see charts and graphs, so I like to bring those too. So sometimes we have to use these to make the case as well. Pictures are warm and fuzzy, but we want hard proof, right? So he compared the results while he was doing these first Eden facilities with control facilities, right? Antidepressant prescriptions. In-house pressure sores, bed sores, went down. Incontinence, which is a big sign of helplessness, went down. Drug cost per resident per day. So in the control facility, stayed the same, went up a little bit. In the Eden facility, in fact, there are Alzheimer's units that are doing the Eden alternative that have eliminated psychotropic drugs. They don't use them anymore. They don't need them. To me, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. And the most significant statistic for me is the number of deaths per quarter, the mortality rate. How many people were dying in these nursing homes? In the control facility, went up a little bit. And in the Eden facility, so people were actually living longer. Sometimes now, pictures and statistics aren't enough to make the case. But I think we can always count on television to tell us the truth. So let's see what my good friends the Simpsons have to say.
Okay, kids, we only have time for a quick visit to Grandpa, so as soon as he feels loved, we're out of there. Oh, you must smell leftovers.
Please, we call them senior citizens.
Oh, a dog! What a nice surprise! I'm gonna pet you raw.
Can we keep your dog, please?
Keep my dog. To when?
Not too long, just till we die.
Well, he does seem happy here.
Also, gerontological studies have demonstrated that animal companions can slow the inevitable decline.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you go find a parade and rain on it?
So Dr. Thomas had found the cure. He had found the cure. And as he started teaching other nursing homes about this, he wrote it this way. He said, life in a human habitat revolves around close and continuing contact with plants, animals, and children. And it's these relationships that give the young and old alike a pathway to a life worth living. And that became one of the founding principles of the Eden Alternative. In your handouts, I gave you a list of the 10 principles. That one's number 2. So the Eden Alternative, he started teaching this all over the country to people. Bring this to your nursing home. Bring this to your facility. That's how I found out about it. And there's a couple people in the room who have already said they've experienced Dr. Thomas. They've gone to one of the workshops. They've heard about it already. So he started training people all around the country, and it started growing. There's 1,500, a couple thousand of Eden associates trained. That means they've gone through a 3-day training. And I conduct those trainings along with about 20 other trainers. And there are several hundred nursing homes across the country that have petitioned to be part of the Eden registry, which means that they've done more than just buy a dog, which a lot of nursing homes do, right? or buy a cat, buy some plants. And what you get when you do that is you end up with fat dogs and dead plants, right? We were doing a great job at the facility I was at, and we still had a fat dog, right? But if you're not careful, if you don't involve a lot of training in it too, and help the staff understand why we're doing it, and how we're actually attacking the 3 plagues. We're not just bringing in dogs, cats, and plants and children, right? So hundreds of nursing homes have entered the Eden Registry, which means they're kind of certified. It's our licensure process. And if you're looking for a nursing home and you want to find the registry, it's at the Eden Alternative website, which is also in your notes there. You can find a whole list of all the licensed facilities there. Unfortunately, nursing homes were still designed to be medical institutions, right? And it's kind of hard to adapt them to the model we're talking about. This is a typical floor plan. And I don't know if you can read this, but in here, there's a nurse's station in the center, right? Regulations require when you build a nursing home that there has to be a sight line from the nurse's station to all the rooms, and no room, no bed can be a certain number of feet away from the nurse's station, right? So it's designed around that principle, that medical care. No one can be so far away that it's inefficient for us to get there, right? There's that industrialization trend coming back in. And actually the rooms in these nursing homes, these common nursing homes, they call them semi-private rooms where you have 2 beds. But actually, I don't know what that means, semi-private. Is that like almost pregnant? You know, because either it's private or it's not, right? Well, those rooms were patterned after Civil War field hospitals, right? This is the tent, and there were 2 cots in the tent. And if you were in the closest cot to the door, you got more attention from the doctors. So imagine your typical nursing home room. You walk in the door, there's 2 beds, right? Probably the sicker person is in the bed closer to the door. That's so the nurses and the nurses' aides can get to them faster, right? Well, that's where we got that brilliant idea during the Civil War, right? So even though we've created this Eden alternative, we're still working in a model that was designed on some really old ideas. So what's next? What's next? How can we fix it? What can we do about it? Well, Dr. Thomas's next great idea is called the Greenhouse Project. And this came just like the folks who designed Chimp Haven, from Dr. Thomas and some other smart people. I think Ed said that he was at one of these brainstorming sessions, sitting down and getting out a blank sheet of paper, saying, okay, if we wanted to design the perfect place for our elders to live out their remaining years, what would it look like? And it looks something like this. That's a greenhouse. Now notice that doesn't look like a nursing home, right? That looks kind of like a house. What he did was he took a 60-bed nursing home, tore it down, built 6 greenhouses. Each of them holds 10 residents, 10 elders, right? They share a support staff of registered nurses, licensed nurses, heavy housekeeping staff, and rehab specialists, things like that. Probably some of the things that all of you do if you do in a nursing home. Now you would travel between the 6 houses that live in a neighborhood really close together. So the registered nurse is on an emergency pager all the time, very close by if they need emergency help, and medications are giving out. They don't have a med cart anymore. They travel around to the different greenhouses because that's where the elders live. It's their house. So the medical help comes into my house to help me, and then it goes out again, right? The floor plan of a greenhouse looks like this. Instead of a nurse's station as the center, this is called the hearth area. So there's a fireplace, a bunch of lazy boys around it, and a kitchen. That's the center of the greenhouse, just like in your home. Living room, kitchen, that's where the center, that's where all the good stuff happens. Not the medicine cabinet. And this is what it looks like. This is the hearth area. Lazy boys all around, everyone's sitting there, not in their wheelchairs, because you wouldn't just have a wheelchair at home. You'd have a couch or a recliner to sit in, right? This is what a room looks like. Notice that it's private. There's only 1 bed in there. You might also be able to see the little track up on the ceiling. Well, in nursing homes, we have these giant monstrosities called lifts, right? And they're these big hulking machinery types of things that hang out in the hallway. And when you need to take someone for a bath, you go grab this hulking monstrosity, wheel it down to their room, they get in kind of a sling, and you lift them into the hulking monstrosity, and then you wheel them down the hallway to the bathroom, to the shower, right? Very dignified. Well, in the greenhouse, they built tracks into the ceiling, going from the bed into the bathroom. So when one of the caregivers needs to take an elder to the bathroom or to the shower, they take the sling out of the closet, they hook it into the track, and then they can lift the elder up. With the door closed, take them into the shower or the bathroom. Every bedroom also has a private bath and private shower, right? That's what a bathroom looks like. So you see the tracks up there. The dining room, a big, long dining room table, just like you might have at home or in one of those big old farmhouses, right? They expect not only the elders, but also the staff to eat together. It's a family-style thing. And the staff are it's a new profession that they created. They call them the Shabaz. And they're licensed CNAs who then receive training from dietary and housekeeping, and also a lot of Eden alternative training. And they do all of it, right? At day shift, there's 2 Shabazim in the greenhouse. PM shift is 2, and night shift is 1. And they're supported, like I said, by the nurses and all the medical staff who come into the house and go back out. But those 2 Shabazim take care of the house, kind of like a dorm mother in college, right? They're there to help, but it's your house. So they eat along with the elders who live there. And again, that's what it looks like from the outside. And the results have been incredible. A high percentage of people who go into a greenhouse within a very short time are no longer using a wheelchair or a walker. People who were not talking, who were not eating on their own, go into a greenhouse and all of that melts away. And now they're talking again, now they're eating again. If we had problems keeping their weight up in nursing homes, it's not a problem at all now. Because they're part of the cooking process. They're in the kitchen, they smell the food cooking. If there's bread baking or a cake baking that day, they're smelling it all day and their stomach is calling out to them. There's baked goods coming along. And it feels different. And there's one story that I heard of a woman who, she was going to be in this first pilot project for nursing homes in Tupelo, Mississippi. And her son and daughter-in-law were really happy that she got the chance to move into a greenhouse, but it felt a little too late because she had really stopped feeding herself. She hadn't talked in months, right? Well, they had cameras there that day, and I've seen the video. The day that she moved in, they sat everyone down for dinner, and her son is sitting next to her like he often did when he visited her. He takes the spoon and dips it into the soup, goes to feed her, and she took the spoon out of his hand. She took the spoon out of his hand and fed herself. And there were tears in his eyes. He couldn't believe it. If you've watched that happen with a loved one, you know what that feels like to watch them lose those faculties. But to see them get them back, that's incredible. So the greenhouse works. They proved that you can do it for the same amount of money. In Mississippi, the Medicaid reimbursement rate is much lower than here in California. And they did it, I think it was $114 a day. So these were financially viable. The Shabazim make $4 more an hour, which for them was a huge premium on what CNAs were making in the nursing home. And they loved their job even more. Turnover was way down because they felt the value that they had in there, so much more than CNAs are able to feel. They managed their own schedules. So although they had to have 2 on each shift and then 1 on the night shift, they could work out their start and stop times. As long as it was okay with the elders in the house, it was fine. Right? So much less turnover. Incredible results. And they did this in cooperation with the state and federal government, for regulations. They made sure that we want this to be part of the system. We want this to work. We want it to be replicable, right? So even though they don't have a nurse's station, they've shown that we're covering that necessity as well as a nursing home does, right? So that's what Dr. Thomas came up with, and that's being implemented in all 50 states. They've received a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to do a pilot project in all 50 states. And that's happening. That's what's coming. But what can we do in this room? Well, a couple of things. I know from seeing the pictures and hearing the stories, some of you are feeling a little. Some of you are feeling the shift that we talk about with the Eden alternative. Another thing you can do is start to change your language. You notice I've been using the word elder a lot instead of resident, patient, elderly, things like that. We use elder specifically on purpose. An elder is someone who, by virtue of their life experience, has something to teach us. So you don't have to be old to be an elder, right? But if you have something to teach me about what it means to care for another human being, then you're an elder to me. Another word that you can change is the idea of care. Since we're all in the healthcare profession here, the giving profession, we can think about what that word care means. And in the Eden alternative, it means to help another to grow. Now, in the medical model, care doesn't necessarily mean that. In the medical model, we're actually talking about treatment. And that means to cure a disease or get rid of an illness, right? But care in the Eden alternative means to help another to grow. So if I'm giving you medication to help you walk again, to help alleviate pain, to help you live out your life the way you want to, then that medication is a good thing and I'm caring for you. But if I'm giving you medication to alleviate loneliness, helplessness, or boredom, then I would say that medication isn't such a good thing. And I need to think about those plagues and how we're addressing them. But medication isn't the answer. So take that definition with you and let it sit in. Let it sink in. Another thing is the 3 plagues, the loneliness, helplessness, and boredom. And start to watch for those wherever you are. Not just with older adults, but with anyone. And to really focus and listen for when those are part of the problem. And then let your solutions to those problems address those 3 plagues. So what happens when we get it right? What happens when people are really living their life to the fullest? What does that look like? I think we need that kind of inspiration all the time. So I have one more thing to show you before I finish.
It is the concert event rock and roll fans have dreamed of their entire lives.
Darling, you've got to let me know. Should I stay or should I go?
There's about 7 or so new songs that I want to take a look at.
I feel good.
Nice.
Singing does a lot for your whole body. It's got a lot of life. That's what we have, a lot of life. 24 hours ago, I wanna be again.
While Jack is sitting here, we have the possibility that he'll pass a kidney stone for us today.
Very warm, enthusiastic welcome to the young at heart.
Experience the film that brought audiences to their feet with spontaneous applause at the Los Angeles Film Festival.
This is the best performance I've ever seen in my life.
Should I give it the gas?
They're the rebels, the wild ones, who showed the world they can.
Learn the whole song.
I know we can. I think I can. It's hard.
From Fox Searchlight, the studio that brought you groundbreaking comedies like Sideways, The Full Monty, and Little Miss Sunshine, comes an event 80 years in the making. Young at heart.
I think I can, I think I can, if I want I can, think I can, yes I can, I know darn well I can, yes I can.
That is in theaters right now, and this is your homework to go see this film. And I looked it up for you. I know it's a bit of a drive, but it's at the Edwards Brea Stadium in Brea, California, 6:15 and 9:15. So make it a little trek this weekend. Go see Young at Heart. Thank you.